AITA for teaching my wife and daughter a lesson after they uninvited me from a party I paid for? There are men who build the world with their hands and receive contempt as payment. Frank Wilson had spent more than 20 years waking up before dawn to carve, cut, and polish wood in a workshop that smelled of varnish and hard work. Every dollar he earned went toward a single dream, his daughter Hannah's sweet 15 party. But when everything was ready, the hall, the dress, the music, his own family slammed the door in his face. "We do not want you to go," they told him. "We are embarrassed by your trade." Most would have swallowed their anger in silence. Frank did not. What he did next shook the foundations of his home and forced everyone to face an uncomfortable truth. The call came in at 7 o'clock in the evening on a Friday. I was sanding the edges of an oak bookcase that some architects from downtown Los Angeles had ordered. My hands were covered in sawdust. The radio was tuned to an old country music station, and my mind was set on finishing before Monday because I had already used the advance payment for the final installments on the banquet hall. The phone vibrated 3 times on the workbench before I wiped my hands with the rag I always carry on my shoulder. The screen said Linda, my wife. I answered without suspecting anything. "Frank, I need you to listen to me carefully." Her voice had that tone I knew by heart, the one she used when she had already made a decision and was just informing me. "There has been a change of plans with Hannah's party." I felt a chill run down the back of my neck. Not out of fear, but out of intuition. Something inside me, something that had been accumulating for months like wood shavings on the workshop floor, told me that what was coming was going to hurt. "What change?" I asked. "You are not going." I did not answer. She did not speak for a few seconds either. And in that silence, while the wood dust floated under the light bulb, I felt the ground open up beneath my feet. But let me go back to the beginning, to the real beginning. They have called me Handy since I was a kid. My real name is Frank, but my grandfather gave me the nickname because as a child I spent all my time repairing everything that broke in the house. A light switch, a wobbly chair, the bathroom door handle. "This kid is handy for everything," he used to say. And so it stuck. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, where houses sit packed close together. My old man had a carpentry shop stuffed into a tiny room that did not even measure 4 by 4. It smelled of pine, paint thinner, and fresh coffee, which my grandmother brought him every morning in a chipped mug. That is where I learned the trade. Not in a school, not with a diploma. I learned by watching how his thick, cracked hands, with a scar on his left thumb that he never wanted to explain to me, transformed a piece of pine into something people wanted to have in their homes. I learned to smell the wood to know if it was good, to listen to the sound of the saw to know if the cut was straight, to feel with my fingertips if the surface needed another pass with the sandpaper. My old man never explained things to me with big words. He just told me, "You do it, son. Wood does not lie." And he was right. Wood never lied to me. People did. Over the years I built up my own workshop. It was nothing fancy. A space in the back of the house that Linda and I bought on credit in Whittier, California. It had a corrugated metal roof, cinder block walls, a workbench I built myself, and tools I gathered dollar by dollar. A table saw, an electric planer, chisels, sandpaper of all grits, whatever I needed to work. Honestly, Linda and I met when she worked at a fabric store in Montebello. I had gone to buy some canvas to upholster some furniture, and she helped me. She was 21 years old, with a smile that disarmed you and a way of speaking that made you feel important. I remember she asked me what the canvas was for, and when I told her I was a carpenter, she looked at me with genuine curiosity. "And what is the most beautiful thing you have made?" she asked me. No one had ever asked me that question before. I described a crib I had carved for a neighbor's son, with moons and stars on the headboard. "That sounds beautiful," she told me. And at that moment, I swear, I felt my trade was worth all the gold in the world. We got married 2 years later in a small church in East Los Angeles. The reception was in the backyard of her mother's house with barbecue ribs, potato salad, and a borrowed sound system that played old country songs all night. It was not a luxurious wedding, but it was ours. When Hannah was born, I was 27 years old, and my hands shook so much when holding her that the nurse laughed at me. "Hold her with confidence, Dad," she told me. "You work with your hands. Are you going to be afraid of a 7-pound baby?" For a long time, I thought everything was fine. We were not rich, but we ate 3 meals a day. Hannah went to a decent public school. We paid the mortgage without falling too far behind. I was proud of that. Proud that my calloused hands, scarred from old cuts and with nails always stained with varnish, could support a family. When she was little, Hannah was my shadow. She would sit on a small stool next to the workbench and watch me cut, measure, and nail. She asked me questions that sometimes left me thinking, why does wood smell different when you get it wet? How do you make it so smooth? Can I paint this one purple? Once we made a birdhouse together. We painted it bright yellow and hung it on the tree in the yard. Every morning Hannah would run out to see if a bird had arrived yet. When a sparrow finally moved in, she screamed so loudly that the neighbors peeked out. Those memories hurt now in a particular way, like a splinter that gets under your skin. You cannot see it, but you feel it all the time. The change started without me noticing. It was gradual, like when a good piece of furniture wears down with use and one day you look at it, and it no longer looks the same. Linda was always careful about appearances. When we started going to work events for her sister, who was an accountant at a company in downtown Los Angeles, she insisted that I wear a dress shirt and proper shoes. Do not go in your work boots, Frank, she would say. And I did it without a problem. I understood that there were different contexts, but over the years those comments became more frequent and sharper. They were no longer just for events. They were for everything. Change clothes before you come into the house. You smell heavily of varnish. Do not sit on the couch in those clothes. Wash your hands well. Your nails are black. I kept telling myself that it was normal, that nobody likes the smell of solvent in the living room, that she just wanted to keep the house clean. I repeated it to myself so much that I almost believed it. One day, Hannah was about 13 years old. She was in the kitchen talking with Linda about school. I was coming from the workshop and stopped in the hallway to get some water. I was not eavesdropping. I was simply there. Hannah was saying that her friend Natalie's dad was an engineer and had taken her to a convention in Las Vegas, that another classmate's dad owned a chain of taco shops. Then Linda said something that stuck in me like a rusty nail. Everyone has their own thing, my love. Your dad works differently. Differently. That word again. She did not say, he also works hard. She did not say, your dad is very good at what he does. She said differently, as if my work was something that had to be explained, something that needed an asterisk. I did not say anything. I drank my water and went back to the workshop. But that night, while sanding a shelf, I felt something new, a discomfort I could not name, as if someone had moved a piece of furniture in a dark room, and I kept walking as if everything were in its place. Hannah's Sweet 15 party became the biggest project of my life, more than any piece of furniture, more than any order. She started talking about it when she was 13. She watched videos on TikTok of huge parties, sparkling dresses, halls decorated with colorful lights, and her escort and friends rehearsing choreographies. Linda got just as excited. She showed me banquet halls in Downey, in Pico Rivera, even one in Pasadena that had a garden. This is once in a lifetime, Frank, she told me. We have to do it right. I did the math. The hall cost $2,000, the dress $850, the DJ $450, the food for 120 people another $2,500. Photographer, cake, decoration, souvenirs. In the end, the budget came to around $8,000, a figure that kept me awake for several nights. But I made a decision. I started working like never before. I accepted every order that came in: closets, custom kitchens, bookcases, dining tables. On weekends, I went to sell at the swap meet in East Los Angeles. There were seasons when I worked 7 days a week. I woke up at 5 in the morning and did not put down my tools until 10 at night. Linda never thanked me directly. I suppose she took it for granted. Hannah did not either. To them, the money simply appeared. They did not see the early mornings, the cuts on my fingers, or the back pain that kept me company every night. I kept paying for everything little by little. First the deposit for the hall, then the dress in installments, then the DJ. Every receipt I kept in the folder in the drawer gave me a quiet satisfaction. I earned this money with my hands, I thought. Every dollar bears the mark of wood shavings. 2 months before the party, practically everything was paid off. Hannah spent her afternoons rehearsing with her escort and friends, trying on her dress, and choosing her hairstyle. I watched her from afar with a mix of pride and nostalgia. My little girl was no longer the small child on the stool in the workshop. Then the week before the party arrived, and everything fell apart. First came the small signs. Hannah stopped seeking me out. If I entered the living room, she left. If I spoke to her, she replied in monosyllables. One day I heard her talking on the phone with a friend and caught something that made my blood run cold. No, my dad is not going. It is just that, well, he works with wood, but it is not like you think. It is more like a big business. The same lie again, disguising what I was. But the worst part was that phone call on Friday. When Linda told me I was not going to the party, I felt the entire workshop crashing down on me. I asked her to explain, and she blurted it out without hesitation. Hannah does not want you to go. She is embarrassed for her friends to know that her dad is a carpenter. And what do you think about that? I asked her. I think sometimes we have to be practical, Frank. It is not personal. It is not personal. My own daughter was erasing me from her life out of shame, and my wife was telling me it was not personal. That night, I called Hannah on the phone. I needed to hear it from her. I needed her to say it to my face, even if it was through a speaker. Is it true that you do not want me to go to your party? There was a long silence. Then her quiet voice, almost as if it hurt to say it. Dad, it is just that my friends are going to ask what you do, and I do not know what to tell them. Tell them the truth. I am a carpenter. Another silence, longer than the first. It is just that it is not the same, Dad. There it was. The same phrase Linda had planted years ago. It is not the same, as if my work, the one that fed them, the one that paid for that party, the one that put a roof over our heads, was something to apologize for. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of the workshop. It smelled of freshly cut pine, mahogany varnish, my childhood, my old man, everything I was and that they wanted to hide. I stared at my hands under the dim light of the bulb. I counted the scars, the one on my right index finger from when the chisel slipped while making a chair for Hannah when she turned 3, the one on the back of my left hand from a nail that bent wrong on a table I sold to pay for her middle school uniform. The one on my thumb from the saw that bit me early one December morning while I was finishing an order so I could buy them Christmas presents. Every mark on my skin had its history, and in all of them, somehow, were Linda and Hannah. When did they stop caring? At what exact moment did pride turn into shame? I tried to remember and could not pinpoint a date. It was like rust. By the time you see it, it is already too late. I did not cry. I had no tears left for that. What I felt was something else, a cold clarity, like when you measure a cut with a square and know exactly where the line goes. For the first time in months, the confusion dissolved and I knew with absolute certainty what I had to do. The next day, I drove my pickup truck to my mom's house in Boyle Heights. She has lived alone since my old man died. His workshop is still there, padlocked, full of dust and memories. I asked her for the key. What do you want it for, son? She asked me. To work, Mom. I need a place. She looked at me with those eyes that see everything and did not ask me anything else. She just gave me the key and made me some breakfast. I set up my tools in my old man's workshop. I cleaned the workbench, swept up the old sawdust, and arranged my things. It was a small space, but it was enough for me. That night, I slept on a cot that my mom set up for me in the room that was mine as a child. And then, with all the calm in the world, I started making the phone calls. First to the banquet hall in Pasadena. I spoke to the manager, explained the situation, requested the cancellation and the refund of my money. Then I called the DJ, the photographer, the florist, and the caterer. One by one I undid every commitment. Each call hurt a little, not because of the money, but because each one represented an hour of work, an early morning, a weekend without rest. But I was not going to finance my own humiliation. I was not going to pay for them to erase me. Every receipt I kept in that folder in the drawer, the one for the hall, the one for the dress, the one for the DJ, I took them out and placed them on the workbench. I looked at them one by one. They added up to $7,900. Almost a year and a half of extra work, of early mornings, of Sundays without rest, of backaches that I kept quiet about so as not to worry anyone. All that sacrifice so my daughter could hide me the way you hide an old dish in the corner of the pantry. No, not that. The day of the party arrived. I was in my old man's workshop finishing a dining table for a new restaurant opening in downtown Los Angeles. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon when my phone rang. What did you do, Frank? Linda's voice was a barely contained scream. The guy at the hall says you canceled. Hannah is already dressed. People are already arriving. I did not answer right away. I let her speak. Tell them it was a mistake. Call them right now. Fix this. There is nothing to fix, I told her. I canceled everything. The hall, the food, the music, everything. On the other end, I heard a dull thud, as if something had fallen. Then Hannah's voice came on the line. Dad, what is happening? Why will they not let us into the hall? Her voice no longer sounded like someone coldly excluding me. It sounded like a scared little girl. I canceled the party, Hannah. What? You cannot do that. It is my party. Everyone is already here. A carpenter paid for the party, I told her. The same carpenter you did not want them to see you with. If my trade embarrasses you, then you should be embarrassed by the money that comes from it. There was a silence that weighed heavier than any piece of oak I had ever carried. Do you understand me, Hannah? Every napkin, every light, every foot of that hall, I paid for with these hands that embarrass you. If my hands are not worthy of being there, neither is my money. Then I heard the crying. Not a tantrum, but a deep cry, the kind that comes from the stomach. Linda took the phone back. You're being heartless, she told me with a voice shaking with rage. You ruined your daughter's special day. No, Linda. You too ruined it when you decided I was something to be ashamed of. You should have found someone on your level, she said. I did not get upset. I had spent entire nights thinking about this moment, and there was no longer any room for anger. You are right about one thing, I replied. I should have looked for someone who valued what I am. And regarding that, I want a divorce. There was no response, just the sound of the line disconnecting. I kept looking at the phone for a moment, then left it on the workbench next to a square and a carpenter's pencil. I picked up the sandpaper and kept working. The rhythmic sound of the sandpaper against the wood filled the workshop. It was the same sound I heard as a child when my old man worked late. That sound always brought me peace. And that afternoon, while the world crumbled outside, peace found me again there among the sawdust and the wood. The weeks that followed were not easy. I returned to the house only to pick up my clothes, my personal tools, and my documents. I left an envelope with the divorce papers on the dining room table. Hannah blocked me on all her social networks, Instagram and TikTok, as if deleting me from her phone could erase the fact that everything she had was given to her by my work. Linda called me one more time, 3 days later. She was no longer angry. Her voice sounded empty, like a house without furniture. Are you really going to go through with this? She asked me. It's already done, Linda. And Hannah is 15 years old. One day she will understand, won't she? But I cannot stay in a house where my work is a dirty secret. She did not answer. She hung up without saying goodbye. Now I live in Boyle Heights, near my mom. My old man's workshop smells like new wood again. I have enough orders to support myself. A restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, an office in the Arts District, a family in Pasadena that wants a walnut table for 12 people. I do not have excess, but I do not lack anything either. My mom brings me a cup of coffee in the mornings in the same chipped mug she used to bring my old man. Sometimes she sits for a while on the little stool by the entrance and watches me work without saying anything. I think she understands what happened without me having to explain it to her. Sometimes at night, when I am alone and the workshop is silent and you can only hear the buzz of the light bulb and the crickets in the yard, I remember that little birdhouse painted bright yellow. I remember Hannah screaming with excitement when the sparrow arrived. I remember how she used to hug my legs when she was little and say, "Daddy, you smell like a forest." And I feel a lump in my throat that does not go away with anything, not with work, not with time, not with reasons. Do I regret it? Sometimes in the early morning, when insomnia keeps me awake and the house is dark, I think that maybe I should have gone to the party anyway, stood there in my work shirt and my calloused hands and told the world, "This is me, Hannah's dad, and I do not care what you think." But then I remember Linda's voice saying, "It is not personal," and Hannah saying, "It is not the same." And I know it was not just the party. It was everything else. It was years of feeling like just another piece of furniture in my own house, useful, but not worthy of display. Then I look at my hands with their calluses, their scars, their varnish-stained nails, and I tell myself something my old man taught me without words. These hands build. They never destroy. What broke in my family was not broken by me with a hammer. It broke with words, with silences, with shame. Maybe one day Hannah will look for me. She is 15 years old. She has a lot of living and understanding left to do. Maybe one day she will sit in a nice restaurant and see the wooden table where she eats and think of me. Maybe she will touch the smooth surface and remember what the sandpaper sounded like in the workshop when she was a little girl. That day, if it comes, I will be here with open doors and outstretched hands. But with Linda, there is no turning back. A marriage cannot sustain itself when one person allows something as basic as respect to rot. She had years to defend who I was in front of our daughter, and she chose the easy way out. Keeping quiet, justifying, minimizing. That is not repaired with apologies. And that has no remedy. Comment. This story stayed with me long after I finished watching it. I realized how much self-respect shapes the way we show up in our closest relationships. Setting boundaries can feel tough, but it often leads to the internal clarity we all need. Kindness toward yourself is just as important as the kindness you show to others every day. Healing comes when we stop accepting situations that slowly chip away at our worth. I hope you pause for a moment and think about where you might be carrying unnecessary shame right now. True responsibility means choosing what's right for your own peace, even when the choice feels hard. You deserve to be valued exactly as you are, with no apologies needed for who you are or what you do. Choosing calm over chaos is a quiet kind of strength we can all practice. Let me know in the comments what lesson hit home for you today. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.